Telling you just now about China, and I told you about how it's appearing in the news more and more nowadays, and I told you about its economic and its military rise, and some of the consequences of it and the explanations behind it. So all of these points beg the following question. If China's rise continues, how will the world change over the next few decades? For some, a dominant China would threaten the idea that individuals should be allowed to make their own informed choices about their lives, and that the government should defend and encourage this independence. However, other analysts argue that China's rise on the world stage need not necessarily be a source of angst. And we would have to admit, I think, that the world order that has run things since the Second World War is actually really nothing to be proud of. So maybe a change of tack wouldn't be so bad after all. By way of example, I could list a whole host of conflicts provoked or fueled by the United States and its partners, its West and other Western powers, which have been disastrous for all of those involved, both the aggressors and the victims. The first example that comes to mind is, of course, the Vietnam War. Then, in more recent years, we could think about other examples of military interventions that have taken place and which have been led by the West in different parts of the world. These, in many cases, have led to nothing more than to spark off new conflicts. Just think of Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. We can also think of the West's failure to put a stop to preventable tragedies in places like Rwanda, Bosnia, and the Congo. So I've mentioned China's use of its veto power at the UN, but actually if we are to consider the number of times that the United States, on the other hand, has hampered world progress through the use of its veto, we can see that once again the West has nothing to boast about. Just think of the suffering that America has inflicted in Palestine as a result of its behavior at the UN Security Council. And as for the environment, a point I mentioned earlier in the first speech, China may be the world's largest polluter today, but Western countries are the ones who bear the heaviest burden if we are to analyse who is actually historically to blame for global warming. It is also true that China may have high levels of inequality, but can we really take the American style of capitalism as a model, a good model for egalitarian distribution? I don't think so. In my view, the growth that China has achieved in recent years should not necessarily be seen as a threat, since it has actually lifted many millions of people out of poverty, allowing them to live more dignified lives. It is indeed easy to feel scared and threatened when we're faced with change like that which we are currently seeing on our front pages when we look both at the economic section and other stories relating to China's military power. So there are indeed reasons to be concerned with some of the changes we're seeing out in the Far East. But before the West tries to preach to the Far East, maybe it should consider its own actions and take a look at itself. Ladies and gentlemen, it's impossible to deny that China is on the rise, but instead of seeking confrontation or retreating into the bunker, we should meet the challenge head on. We should help China to grow in a manner which is respectful of its own citizens and respectful of the world. In the process, we might just learn something and, as a result, improve our own societies. Thank you.